by Peach's Big Juicy Booty. I mean, last time I looked at it, yeah, it was pretty juicy. I need to take another look at it, though. And with another exciting episode of Havoc Rambles. Now, I've got a script for this technically, but only somewhat. I don't have every single part of this thing scripted because I kind of did this one in a hurry, but this one is more structured than I thought that it was going to be when I was first whipping it up at work. Now, I recently came across an interesting post on Reddit the other day. Well, technically I came across like 4 posts on Reddit, but one was removed before I could record this, and 2 others were included in a video where the audio got corrupted. And when I say corrupted, I mean it was corrupted fucking twice. And when I say it was corrupted twice, I mean the audio wasn't even included in the first try of this, and in the second try, my gain was too high, and the recording sounded like I was giving my microphone some of the best head of its life.
Now suck me off.
Anyway, the article goes as follows. It was posted by a Redditor named Cartoonicus Studios, and it says, if Sonic Shadow Generations doesn't include weapons for Shadow, what is even the point? Now, before I go into what I originally scripted for this, I just want to make a quick note. I do think that Shadow Generations can survive without necessarily having Shadow's weapons in the game. Do I necessarily think that the weapons shouldn't be in the game? Well, no. I do think that some kind of weapon type mechanics can be in the game, especially with what we've seen in some other games that I will go into in a bit. But I wouldn't necessarily say that the game will just be bad or won't feel correct if Shadow doesn't have some kind of weaponry in the game. I think that's a very blanket statement to make, but this is Reddit, and people make blanket statements that are a little iffy all the goddamn time, and that's why I make videos on them. Now, what I wanted to say was this. The idea of Shadow getting his weapons in general isn't bad. Now, we've seen it implemented before, even post Shadow the Hedgehog, where the concept originally started, so there's no telling how it can be implemented in Shadow Generations to begin with. We already have plenty of new power-ups via the Doom Powers trailer that I recently reacted to, but there are other ways his tools could be implemented as well. Here are some of the ideas that I have, and I listed them as bullet points. Number 1, we could include them in the way that 06 did. Now, if you remember, 06 included weapons in these areas that Shadow could go to access certain vehicles and then use different types of weapons on those vehicles. You had the glider with the machine gun, you had the buggy with the rockets, and I also think that there might have been a variation of the buggy that had machine guns as well. There was the motorcycle that also had machine guns, and I think that there was the water speeder, or whatever you want to call that, one that you could get on a couple of times that went over the water and fired I believe it fired rockets. But if you included it like that in certain areas of levels where you could access vehicles and then use his weapons that way, I think that would be a really cool addition. And not only would it also give kind of like that wink callback towards Shadow and Sonic 06, but it would also be a way to not make it too quote-unquote edgy and have him just running around with like a Glock or some shit like that. Another idea that I had is that we could include an on-rails turret section or multiple on-rails turret sections like in Shadow the Hedgehog. If you remember in levels like Lost Impact, you could get onto a turret and it would move through the level and you could rotate around and fire at things. I honestly enjoyed those parts of the levels, even though I despise Lost Impact with a fiery passion. Fuck those experimental chaos. They can go die in a goddamn fire. But the turret sections themselves, I think, were okay, because there was, of course, the control to be able to make it speed up. You can move around in a 360-degree angle, if I could remember, to fire add different things in the area. They were really good for when you were collecting those experimental chaos, when ones weren't fucking hiding behind walls, making them impossible to spot half the time. But I thought that they were a really like neat thing, and they weren't just Shadow running around with a goddamn AK. So it kind of felt a little bit more Sonic-y, if that makes any sense, and I think that that would fit well in specific levels in Shadow Generations as well, at least in my mind. Now, another idea that I had is that we could add a weapons cache, like in Shadow the Hedgehog, with specific weapons, maybe mainly Wispons. So again, Shadow isn't running around with military-grade weapons, even though he does technically work for the military, so I don't necessarily see anything wrong with him using military weapons.
If you enjoy the video, please consider giving it a like, comment what you thought about the video, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Now, on with the show.
But if he had weapons like, I don't know, the Shadow Katana, or maybe some of the Black Arms weapons that are more plasma alien-like. I honestly feel like the weapons from the Black Arms in general are not all that different from the Wispons, as in they're cartoony and alien and kind of like sci-fi enough to where it's not nearly as jarring as Shadow and, you know, the military weapons that he was able to use in that game. And I think having weapons caches around that he could use to maybe hit enemies from afar, and maybe he can only have one equipped like he could in the Shadow the Hedgehog game, and was able to run around with those and fire those at certain enemies that were in the air or maybe harder to reach. I honestly think that that would be a really cool inclusion, and that could work in Shadow Generations, at least in certain parts of the level, and maybe in other parts of the level where you had to get on vehicles, or if you had to traverse to other parts of the map. Then maybe what he could do is he could pull a Star Wars Outlaws and just drop his weapon for no reason. And something that I'm just now thinking about that isn't in my script is maybe those vehicle sections where he could get on the Black Arms enemies after roughing them up a little bit and fly on those. That would be a really cool inclusion as well. Also, I just thought of this as well, but like, I really hope we get Sky Troops from Shadow the Hedgehog and Shadow Generations. We might not, honestly, even though I would probably argue that Sky Troops is a better level to include from the Shadow the Hedgehog game as opposed to Westopolis. Like, yes, we get it, we get the meme, 10 times you gotta go through Westopolis, and it would be hilarious to have specifically 9 side missions, or maybe 8 side missions if there are 2 acts to Westopolis. It would be really cool if there were specific 8 or 9 side missions depending on how many acts there are of Westopolis. Yes, that would be funny, but something that I think would actually be a better inclusion is if they had Sky Troops in the game instead, and had that as the level that was from Shadow the Hedgehog specifically. Now, what they could do is they could add several levels from Shadow the Hedgehog, which would make sense for his game, since he's only been in so many mainline Sonic games. At least 2 or maybe even 3, have just one era be specifically just Shadow the Hedgehog, 3 levels from that game, since there were so many levels, and there were some really good ones, although I again would argue that Sky Troops is the most iconic out of the Shadow the Hedgehog levels. I would say Westopolis is probably the second most iconic, and the only reason Westopolis is so iconic is because of how many times you have to play it to completely beat the game. But off of that aside, what we could do is we could include side missions, and this is kind of the last idea that I had for including Shadow's weapons into Shadow Generations. We could even include side missions, like in Base Generations. If you remember, in Base Generations, there were several side missions that you could do with the Sonics, where you would have Sonic's quote-unquote annoying friends help them out in certain levels, and they could do specific things. Sometimes they would go against them too, like in a sporty versus type of thing, where you have to get through a specific puzzle before the character could screw you over in some way. It would be interesting to implement Shadow's friends in that, say with Rouge using her grenades, or maybe even Omega having him fire his machine guns, and having him access their weapons by summoning them, and specifically having the focus of those side missions being using weapons. Maybe some other examples that we could possibly think of are maybe gun soldiers or gun robots, being activated and then shooting down specific areas so that Shadow could progress using like the actual military weapons that the fan base would rather Shadow just not use. And when I say the fan base, I mean everybody else. Me personally, I didn't care too much about Shadow using military weapons. I thought it was kind of goofy, but I felt like that was kind of the intention. But this isn't a video about trying to wax lyrical about Shadow the Hedgehog. I could make a video like that, but that's not today's video. That's not what I'm doing right now. But yeah, those are all the ideas that I have, at least right now, of incorporating Shadow's weapons into Shadow Generations, and I definitely think that it could work out. Just for the sake of, doing it because I can, and because, well, this is a slightly shorter video than what I usually do for the weekly uploads, I'll look and see what the comments are saying under this post and share them with you guys. So, Reggie GigaChat67 says, if Sonic Cross Shadow Generations doesn't include an HD remake of Sonic Labyrinth, what is even the point? That's funny. That's pretty funny. Another person, HyperDragon17, says, he is a weapon, he doesn't need guns. I mean, that is true. He is a weapon, he doesn't necessarily need the guns himself. Raging Schizophrenic says, I don't know, maybe part of the point is to salvage Shadow's image from being an edgy meme character, and that giving him guns help established in the first place. And then today, a particular 4579 responded by saying giving him guns was cool, not a meme. That was definitely the idea. That was what they were trying to do. It didn't necessarily work out that way, but that's what they were trying to do. Raveness says Shadow doesn't need them. He's powerful all on his own with Chaos and Doom powers. Weapons are useless. Yeah, they are a bit redundant, but I still think that they would at least be kind of interesting. FNAF 2014 veteran says Shadow is the weapon. Again, yeah, I agree with that. Judgment Yu says if Sonic Cross Shadow Gens doesn't include Segex, what is even the point? That is actually a good point, and I don't understand why more people aren't making that point. In fact, I might reply specifically. And one more comment here by Peach's Big Juicy Booty. I mean, last time I looked at it, yeah, it was pretty juicy. I need to take another look at it, though. Bro, imagine future me uses that as some sort of fucking clickbait. I'm gonna be rolling on the floor. Sega's holding off on giving Shadow guns again to make the Fortnite collab look cooler. I don't know why Sonic hasn't collaborated with Fortnite yet, unless they already have. I don't play Fortnite, so I don't actually know. In fact, the only reason I even know that there are so many collabs to begin with is because a specific acquaintance of mine will not shut the fuck up about them. So, about like Fortnite in general. So, I honestly don't know. Maybe there has been a freaking Fortnite collab all this time, and I just do not know about it. But yeah, pretty much that's all I have to say on the matter today. Again, this was a slightly shorter video, but it was still a fun one to talk about. I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. Do you guys think that Shadow should get weapons or some kind of weaponry in Shadow Generations? And yes, of course, let me know if you guys think that that's a little redundant. Because he is the weapon himself and we have all the Doom powers. I really want to get a conversation on this going, so let me know what you guys think in the comments. But yeah, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys in the next one. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace, and stay tuned, everybody. Yeah, so that's not a Mexican. This nigga Jen is racist! He said Mexican like 7 times!
I think he was some sort of Spanish!
Okay.